Welcome to So Very Easy. My name is Laura, and fat quarters are a lot of fun to collect. They're sort of like potato chips. You just can't have one. The problem is when you get home, you need to make something with them. So I have a very quick pattern to make a quilt using fat quarters. So for every 2 fat quarters, you will make 3 12-inch blocks. When you buy bundles of fat quarters, what's really nice about them is you know this entire collection is going to go together. So there's no guessing involved. They're going to match. I often will buy the bundles and then I'll buy a large amount of some kind of a solid, maybe a white, or in this case, maybe a dark or a light purple, because it's going to go with this. So I would buy a meter of at least one of these. And that's going to give me a chance to do a border or the binding all in the same color. Now these fat quarters are from Timeless Treasures and they have these beautiful little pansies and butterflies. With this block, 2 fat quarters is going to make 3 blocks. And what you need to do is match them up so that you have a contrast between them. So you'd have a light and a dark. Something with some kind of a contrast. Even if you do 2 solids together, as long as you have a contrast, this block is going to turn out great. The other thing you need to do is look at thread. When you have a large selection of different colors, you have to take thread into consideration. If you use a white thread, it's a little too stark. A dark thread, it's, well, a little too dark. So a medium line usually works out well. And if you get one that has a bit of a dusty color to it, it will blend really well with all of the fabrics. So you won't have to change the thread throughout the project. And in this case, I'm using their Aurifil 2562. It seems to be a perfect match. So I'll put this in the bobbin and the top. And you're going to be able to work with one set at a time. Depending on the size of the fabric, the fat quarter will equal somewhere between 18 inches and 22 inches. So you'll need to take both of your pieces that you have matched up, the light and the dark, match them right sides together, give them a good press and a starch. If you have a selvage end, you must cut the selvage off because it will shrink different than the rest of the fabric. And when you have the one edge squared up by taking the selvage off, you need to square up the one long edge. I have one side squared up and the top. I need to come down 7 inches and cut a 7-inch strip right along the top. With that 7-inch strip, you need to cut 3 7-inch squares. With the 3 7-inch squares, you're going to need to make half square triangles. So you'll draw the line from corner to corner and you'll stitch on each side of that line at 1/4 inch. But before I take this to the machine, I'm going to do all the cutting for the quilt first. So I've cut the squares, I've drawn the line because it's flat and already here. I'm going to pin them and stack them all and bring them all to the machine at the same time. So I'll move my stack and cut the next piece. I'm going to need to cut 2 rows at 3.5 inches. You are going to have some leftover, so you can put this aside and maybe we can use it for the border. When you have the 2 pieces at 3.5 inches, you still have your right sides together. You need to stitch both those rows together. And because you cut the fabric together with the right sides facing, you do not need to match them. They're already matched for you. And when you have a 1/4 inch seam done, you'll need to press the fabric towards the dark side. When the 2 strips have been pressed, you'll be able to take them and match them up together. You'll be able to see that that seam is matching up. So you're going to have one seam going in this direction, one seam going in that direction, and match them up. And you will need to cut 6 of these sections at 3.5 inches. And having them stacked as you cut them means they're already matched up for you. So you can take into the machine and sew a 1/4 inch right down the edge. And when those seams are sewn together and you open it up, you have a 4 patch. To press it, you're going to press it to the opposite color. So in this case, it's going to go to the light. So one side is going to go to the light and the other side is also going to go to the light. And by doing that, you will notice that that little center is going to want to open up, and it will make a tiny little forepatch. When you press that, it's going to keep that nice and flat. You now have 6.5 inch forepatch. Now you can take your half square triangles, bring them to the machine, and finish them up. And when you've stitched a 1/4 inch from that center line, you're going to be able to cut it apart. And then you will be able to take this and press it towards the dark side. Then this is going to need to be trimmed to 6.5 inches. There are many different ways you can square them up. Today I'm going to use a ruler called Block Lock. And what I like about it is it has a little groove or a little piece that has been cut out of the ruler. And that little groove sits right along that seam where you've pressed all the fabric over to that dark side. That is where it's going to sit, right in there. And you'll be able to see what side it goes on. But sometimes I will put arrows so that I know that is where the seam is going to go. Or the dark side. This particular one happens to be 6.5 inches, so it's really convenient for this size. And that seam is going to fit exactly into that little groove or that little piece that's been cut out. And once it's in there, it sort of stays put. So now you can trim 2 sides. Then what I like to do is I like to turn the ruler and the fabric all in one motion going towards the dark. And I'm going to take my hand and just turn the fabric and the ruler all the way so that I'm able to trim off this edge. And I'm going to be able to see exactly where I've trimmed off here, and I will be able to finish trimming it off here. If you find you're not getting enough fabric to do a 6.5 inch square, you can do a little bit less than a 1/4 inch from each of that side. So just do a very scant 1/4 inch. It's going to give you a little bit more to trim off. So from those 2 fat quarters, I was able to get 6 half square triangles, 6 forepatches, and I still have a little bit left over. These are going to make the blocks. So you're going to need 3 half square triangles into each pile and have it so the light is going towards the light. Divide your forepatch up, and the dark is going to come down the center. And that is your block. And I'm going to do this for all the blocks from that entire pile of fat quarters. So to sew these together, we're going to sew the 2 seams on both the edges and then sew the center. And that's going to equal a 12.5 inch block. When you're going to do the final pressing, you're going to be able to press the seams going in one direction, the seams going in the other, so they're all going around in a circular motion, and that will open up that little square in that center to remain flat. When the 3 blocks are done, I'm going to be able to start the next 2 fat quarters and make them exactly the same way as you did this one. And when all of the 12 fat quarters are done, I will have a total of 18 blocks. Now I'm only going to need 16 for the quilt because I'm going to do the quilt with 4 blocks by 4 rows, and that's giving me a total of 16 blocks, and this is going to equal a square. So I am going to have 2 left over. So now we need to put them in an arrangement that we like. So you have 4 rows with 4 blocks, and all the blocks are going in the same direction. But what will happen when you switch up those blocks? We get another pattern. And if we switch them up even more, you get another design. There are many, many different options that you can lay this out. And once we have decided on a placement that we like, we just need to sew them together in rows and then sew all the rows together. And when you have them all sewn together, you can either quilt them that way or add a border. You can also take the leftover pieces you have from the fat quarters and make a scrappy border. Depending on how many fat quarters you use will depend on the size of the quilt. You can use just a few and make a table runner, or you can use a lot and make a very large quilt. If you've used 12 fat quarters, you're going to get a quilt about 54 inches. It's a quick and easy way to use up the fat quarters. Thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.